Hello and welcome back to the Matchbook Betting Exchange Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined as always by the regular duo of Mark O'Haire and Adrian Clarke. It was a weekend of mixed results, guys, I have to say, just in terms of the Premier League in general. Some absolutely insane results. It was the weekend of the 10 men. Mark O'Haire still managed to sneak his best bets, making it 3 out of 3 for the season, and the under 2.5 goals we were talking about off air on Everton versus Wolves was as banger as they're going to get for a 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff. So plenty to look forward to this weekend, and there's no better place to start than getting straight into it. But the 4 games we're going to cover 4 marquee games from the Premier League: Luton versus West Ham, Brighton versus Newcastle United, Liverpool versus Aston Villa, and Arsenal versus Manchester United. EFL section, European section, and then best bet section. Do check out the description for timestamps that'll be available from Wednesday evening. We'll get straight into Friday night football, and this is an exciting game now for Luton fans and just Premier League fans in general to see Luton Town at home for the first time this season. They're home to West Ham. Luton Town are 4.9 in the win market. West Ham 1.83. The draw is available at 3.95. Both teams to score, yes. Favoured in that market at 1.87. The Asian handicap line sees Luton get the 3/4 of a goal head start. Quite a big start there at 1.89. And the goal line for this game is 2.5. That's pretty much 50-50, ever so slightly shaded towards the over. So, look, Adrian, I'll let you kick us off this week in terms of Luton. And you obviously watched a lot of them in the Championship last season. For those that probably haven't had a chance to watch their games, for the first 2 games, where are Luton? What type of team are they? And do they have a chance at home to West Ham?
Well, they're very direct. Yeah, so they'll knock the ball long for fun, and they use their wing backs very, very well. Ryan Giles and the guy they got on loan from Manchester City as well, Kabore. They will get a lot of the ball, and they'll put crosses into the box for Carlton Morris and one of the other strikers to attack. So, but they've played okay. They've been creditable, I would say, in 2 really tough games so far. Obviously, Brighton away and Chelsea away isn't easy, but they've been on the wrong end of some hidings so far. They've faced 23 shots per game, which is the highest average across the Premier League. So yeah, they do need to tighten up a little bit, but I do expect the stats and performance levels to be different at Kenilworth Road. It's a pretty unique place, and Premier League teams, some of them might rock up there and not fancy it. And I think that's going to be a big advantage for Luton Town. We don't know how West Ham will be when they go there, but I don't expect them to get an easy ride. It's one of those, I think, based on what we've seen so far, you've got to fancy West Ham because their performance levels have been excellent, surprisingly good. Very, very impressed with them across the first 3 matches. So you want to be on side with them, but it's the opening night under the lights at Kenilworth Road. It's going to be a febrile atmosphere, so it puts me off. I've got to be honest. Another reason to maybe get on side with West Ham is that Luton actually, and this is a surprising stat, weren't particularly strong at home against the best teams in the Championship last year. Actually, not just at home, home and away. So in 18 matches against the top 8 last season, they won 3, Luton Town, which is a really surprising stat considering they now find themselves in the Premier League. So there's quite a bit that would put me off of Luton here, but again, it's that first night excitement that makes me think they've got a chance here, and it makes me feel like they've got a chance of scoring a goal as well, because they are going to put West Ham United under pressure for certain periods of this match. So yeah, I was also looking at unders because Kenilworth Road was very low scoring last season in the Championship. It averaged only just over 2 goals per game. It was, I think, the lowest in the Championship. So they're not used to sort of seeing 3-2 thrillers there week in, week out. But having seen them defend in the early weeks, seen them struggle against top flight forwards, I can't back them to keep a clean sheet here, Luton. But I do think, with the atmosphere, with the mood, with the party vibe, that they can cause problems and they can score at least 1 goal. So I've landed on both teams to score, which actually has been a really good bet so far in the Premier League this season. It's currently coming up trumps 59% of the time. So that's pretty positive. And I would hazard a guess that at Kenilworth Road this time around, both teams will score.
Okay, we're landing on both teams to score there. I think it's been clipped in a bit on Matchbook, but currently around the 188 mark. I'll get our producer Ryan to confirm that. Mark O'Haire, you've actually landed on the same bet, but a little bit on West Ham. And look, the start of the season, we weren't really keen on them in the Outright podcast. They hadn't made any signings to replace Declan Rice at that point. But is there an argument that Mark Noble has done as good a job as a director of football as anyone in the Premier League based on that last week and 10 days of signings?
Yeah, possibly. I don't want to judge them too soon, but I've been impressed by the business that they have done. I think possibly in the summer, I thought West Ham are a kind of club I don't want to trust with £100 million because, in the past sort of 5 years or so, they've not often spent money too well. But certainly the signing of Ward-Prowse has made an immediate impact. Alvarez is a player I really like, just quite a gnarly kind of guy who won't allow them to be bullied in that central midfield area. You can also slot in at centre half, of course, and Kudus is an incredible acquisition, really. I'm not sure how he fits into this West Ham team or how David Moyes plans to get the best out of him, but certainly he is a difference maker and he could be the real sort of the standout quality for West Ham this season if he gets given that license to roam and freedom to show us what he's capable of. So I'm being fairly warm on West Ham. I'm not quite as sold as Adrian has been across the first 3 games. I thought they were the better team against Bournemouth, but David Moyes' pragmatism probably played against them in that sense. Then against Chelsea, I thought they were actually second best for the most part, and I thought the win was slightly kind on West Ham. But last week, full credit to them. They absolutely moised Brighton, didn't they? 20% of the ball, played on the counter-attack, bullied them in areas that they knew they could get the best. And Bowen and Michail Antonio have been kind of combining and dovetailing brilliantly. Just that energy in the press, kind of carrying the counter as well. And I think at times last year, West Ham did look quite laboured because of the amount of matches that they played. But at the minute, they look really fresh and really dangerous too. So they'll fancy their chances. But like Adrian says, it's hard to put a number on it, but you have to give Luton a couple of extra percentage points because of the fact that this is a Friday night under the lights, first game at the Kenny, which is a boisterous place at the best of times. I'm not going to say it's going to be intimidating for West Ham, but it won't be far off it. They do get right up in your face and they do give it to you as well. And I think, Luton will not be judged this season on away trips to Brighton and Chelsea, where they concede 20 shots on target and manage just 3 themselves, one of which is a penalty. They will be judged in home games against teams outside of the Big 7. This is an opportunity for Luton. If they want to survive in the Premier League, they have to start picking up points in these kind of games. And I do think there is an opportunity for them to put something together here. My issue with Luton at the minute is, as Adrian says, they are quite direct and they do utilise those wing-backs enormously. There's not a lot else at the minute, and I need to see more from the central midfield options, and that's a concern, especially against a team like West Ham, who physically, I can't see them getting bullied like some teams possibly will be. Aguirre is back from suspension, which is a big plus. As I say, with Alvarez now there in holding midfield too, they're a big team, and they could negate Luton's threats in that sense. However, West Ham, in this kind of position, going away to bottom half dwellers where you expect them to be picking up points. They've not been doing that under David Moyes. Go back to the start of last season. They've now played 10 games against teams who finished in the bottom 10 last season, including Bournemouth this year. They've won just once in those 10. They've lost 6 of them and managed 1 clean sheet, which isn't good enough for West Ham. And that would be a big concern about backing them at odds-on prices. They have conceded in all 3 games so far. They have only kept 3 clean sheets in 20 away trips, going back to the beginning of last season too. So, yeah, I do give Luton an extra edge here. I think they can score, but ultimately West Ham do have a huge amount of attacking personnel who can create it and sort of cause concern in that Luton defence too. So, yeah, I agree with Adrian. Both teams to score.
Okay, both teams to score. We've got confirmation 187 currently on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. It'll be interesting what that price will be come kick-off once the team news come in. So do check out that market late on Friday night. So we're going to lock that in as an official bet on the podcast. Both teams to score. Luton versus West Ham, 187. We will go to the second game, which is the second Sky game of the weekend. It's Saturday, 5:30. Brighton at home to Newcastle United. What a massive game this is for both teams after disappointments last week. We got Brighton at 272, Newcastle favourites at 258. The draw is available at 4.0. Both teams' score is as low as 1.49. It's getting lower each week, those Brighton both teams to score markets. Get into that in a second. No, 278. The Asian handicap market is a draw no bet market. Newcastle slight favourites. Obviously, they're at 187. And the goal line, very high, 3.5, but is shaded a good bit towards the under. Mark, I touched on that both teams to score price, and you're sort of coming into this game looking at goals. And where have you ended up come and finished landing based on these two teams and their performances last week?
I found this one a real sort of mind FUCK, because I kind of came into it looking forward to kind of backing goals, expecting goals, Brighton matches under De Zerbi, almost deliver goals, 9 times out of 10, 3.5 goals per game, 71% going over 2.5, 66% seeing BTTS, 54% going over 3.5 goals. We talked last week about how no team in the Premier League has averaged a better XG output than Brighton since he was appointed, which is an astonishing statistic that just deserves being repeated, really. And I think they've added clinicality to their sort of creativity as well. They scored twice more in over half of their Premier League games under De Zerbi. Perhaps we didn't see that at best, really, against West Ham, but the issue for Brighton right now is defence. I made a big song and dance about it last week and still proceeded to be pro-Brighton, and they got completely and utterly moist, as I said. I talked about Luton's numbers of touches in the box on week 1, Wolves' big chance creation on week 2, and then we saw West Ham lure them in and hit them on the break and generate over 3 expected goals. And De Zerbi protests against this, but losing Caicedo and McAllister does seem to have had a big effect on that midfield. Their matches have been ludicrously open across the first 3. I don't think that's a problem you can solve overnight either. So that creates, vulnerabilities against the Newcastle team, who do have the ability to play on the break if required, the pace and the quality to hurt them. So for Newcastle, I guess there is the blueprint now to beat Brighton, as laid out by West Ham. But there was a stat doing the rounds that in the 6 Premier League matches since the start of last season, where Brighton have had their highest possession figures, they've only taken 2 points from those 6 games and conceded 14 goals, which is horrifying, really. Just on last season, the 5 games where they had the most possession in the Premier League, they conceded over a quarter of their total goals in those 5 matches, which is, again, astonishing. So Newcastle, how do they play this? I think I would have assumed they would have. Exactly. First of all, I thought they'd go for it, but actually, I think if they're smart enough, they will let Brighton have the ball and try to play on the break. And that's actually something Newcastle have done quite routinely now under Eddie Howe in their toughest away trips, and it's not often paid dividends. But if you look, they've played 6 teams who finished in the top 7 away from home since the start of last season. They scored just once in those 6 games. 3 of them ended 0-0. That includes a 1-0 loss away at Man City already, without offering a huge amount. So I wonder whether they will sort of sit back in and try and play on the counter-attack. There's no Sven Botman as well. He's probably their best defender, which might be another reason to do so. And defensively themselves, I said last week, they've not been great. 2 clean sheets in 22 across all comps, 5 clean sheets and 20 away since the start of last season. So I think if you look at the defensive concerns, you might say, well, obviously you want to back goals here, but actually I'm sort of trending more towards under 3.5 and backing any sort of overs based bet here, which is 1.7. My original bet here was Newcastle plus a quarter, 173. That's now 166, which is a no-go. So I'm going to take the next best, which is Newcastle draw no bet, or Newcastle plus 0 at 189, purely because I just think they're a bit more rounded at the minute. They don't lose often. 3 of their 4 away defeats since the start of last year came at Anfield or the Etihad. They've only lost 7 Premier League games across all venues since the start of last season, and 6 of those came against Liverpool, Man City or Arsenal. So we know that they are tactically good enough to match up with Brighton here and present plenty of headaches. And ultimately, Brighton are only returning a 50% win rate under De Zerbi at the MX, which is surprisingly low considering the output they do tend to generate. So kind of happy enough to oppose Brighton here, and probably would be happy to oppose a high goal total too. But yeah, I'm eager to hear what Adrian's thoughts are, because I've kind of gone around in circles.
Yeah, and look, we'll pick up what Mark said on Brighton's defence, Adrian, but a little bit on Eddie Howe in particular after that Newcastle or Liverpool defeat on Sunday. My initial reaction to that game was Eddie Howe absolutely blew it. Is that a harsh thing to say? Like, was it a freak result, or were there things that Newcastle should have done in that second half that meant Liverpool had no way back into that game?
Yeah, they didn't manage the game properly, did they? There would certainly be regrets there, and the nature of the goals that they gave away were really poor and a little bit alarming. So yeah, but as Mark said last week, Newcastle's amazing record of clean sheets is ancient history, really. Across the sort of last 19 matches, I think they've kept 2 clean sheets. In the first 22, I think it was, they kept 12 of last season. So yeah, you can divide up the last year and say, in the last 6 months, Newcastle have been a bit iffy at the back, which is, which would put me off of following in on Mark, really, because I don't know whether I could back them to keep a clean sheet against Brighton and Hove Albion. But what I could go around in circles on this game as well, and I kind of did on my preparation.
Please do, Adrian.
Yeah, it was the one I looked at first was totally price based, but it was BTTS no, which is going against all of the trends and the way that Brighton play. But it's 2.78 now, which is a big old price on BTTS no, especially considering Newcastle tend to blank on the road away to the very best teams, as Mark just said. And Brighton and Hove Albion, yeah, they've been free scoring up until this point, but it's not unheard of for them to misfire at home as well. That they can keep clean sheets. I think they've kept 7 of 16 matches under De Zerbi at the Amex have kept clean sheets. So even though they're chaotic, and even though they do give up a lot of chances, they've also kept plenty of blanks. So yeah, I looked at BTTS no, but then the underlying pattern of Brighton games put me off a little bit. I can see Newcastle on the counter attack really hurting Brighton, because Brighton do leave themselves open, and Newcastle are brilliant on the break, aren't they? We know that, especially with Anthony Gordon now in red hot form as well. So I can see Newcastle causing them problems there, but equally Brighton, with their plethora of exciting attacking midfielders, pressurising a back four that won't contain Sven Botman. I can see Brighton, causing them an equal amount of problems. So look, I've just landed on the draw, because I think it's a really hard game to predict. And I think that when all is said and done, there's not that much between them. It was 0-0 this time last year. That was pre-De Zerbi. But yeah, at a price of 4.0, I just think a small play on that might be the most fun way to go, because this could go one of several ways, really.
Yeah, we've gone around the houses a little bit. There's 3 sort of tentative selections from the guys, I guess. Mark with the drawn about 191. Adrian initially sort of thinking maybe both teams to score. No, it's a small bit big, but has landed on the draw at 4.0. We won't lock in an official bet on the podcast, but maybe want to check out the match with Betting Exchange. We mentioned the volatility in these markets. This is one in particular that could get very volatile once the team news is in from 4:30 onwards. We'll go to Sunday. The guys are in agreement for this game. Spoiler alert. We'll take a look at the betting for Liverpool versus Aston Villa, not on UK TV. Has been moved to Sunday due to Villa's participation in the Europa Conference League. Liverpool 172, Aston Villa 4.8. The draw is available at 4.6. Another very short price on both teams to score. Yes, 155 here. The Asian handicap line sees Villa get a 3/4 goal head start at above evens, 2.04. And the goal line again for this game is 3.5, but it is a good bit shaded in favor of the under market. So yeah, Adrian, take it away, because Alex Ferguson's viral clip of saying he was impressed with Villa after week 1. A lot of people were kind of slagging him off about that, but I'd say he's been vindicated a bit in the last 2 games, because they've been very, very impressive.
Yeah, very, very. I don't think you'd have caught too many people praising Villa after that game. I mean, in midfield, that on the opening weekend, they were shocking, absolutely shocking. But they've sort of regathered and they've come back very strong. Obviously, they've swatted Everton to one side, but Burnley, I didn't expect them to be as good as they were against Burnley. They were swashbuckling at times. Some lovely football, some great goals. Watkins is looking sharp. Diaby looks a terrific signing. And I liked what Unai Emery did with the team. Obviously, no Tyrone Mings, but so he's gone with the back 3. He's got 3 good centre-backs. Or let's just put them all in the team. You've got Cash and Digne, who can absolutely play as wing-backs. You've got 3 central midfielders, and then sort of Diaby in off Watkins. It was a really balanced lineup. And they've been particularly good so far this season on the break, haven't they? They've had 13 direct attacks, which is more than any other Premier League team. They've had 7 shots from fast breaks as well, which is also the most of any Premier League team. Now, when I think of Liverpool at Anfield piling on the pressure, where do they leave themselves exposed? They leave themselves exposed to fast breaks. We've seen it quite a lot, haven't we, over the last few years? So I do believe that Villa will carry a menace when they turn the ball over in this game. And Liverpool still don't have a lot of defensive players in their team, do they? I know that Endo's in there now, but yeah, there's still a very attack-minded outfit. I just think that Villa can make hay and slice through them and create good chances. So that's why I'm looking at actually Aston Villa +1 on the handicap. You look at this fixture, actually, it's interesting. Now, I follow Arsenal, as you know, and this if I backed Arsenal +1 at Anfield over the last 9 or 10 years, I'm losing a lot of money. Not so with Aston Villa, weirdly. This bet would either pay out or, we'd get our money back 8 times out of the last 9 meetings between Liverpool and Aston Villa at Anfield. So they have a track record of going there and being competitive. There's a lot of draws. There's a few narrow one goal defeats. There's also some victories in there for Villa. So yeah, I think that history also says that Villa don't mind this fixture. Of course, Van Dijk's out, suspended, so that's a big blow. And obviously it was Matip, wasn't it, that was playing last weekend. So they're a little bit down to the bare bones at centre-back. So all of this puts me off of Liverpool, who obviously were brilliant in the way that they turned things around at Newcastle. Jota and Nunez coming on to do the business. And if they're at it, Liverpool and Villa, switch off, of course Liverpool can win this game and they can win it well. But I can't quite trust Liverpool just yet. But yeah, so I'm going to go with Villa on the handicap.
Okay, Villa on the handicap +1.0, 1.79, and that is interesting stat on Villa's last 9 games. This bet would pay out or money back 8 times out of 9. Mark, over to you on this one. And Liverpool, look, again, they looked all over the place against Newcastle for that 30 minutes. But a result like that on the eye test, Nunez scoring the winner, no underlying data backing it up, only just what you can see. You'd sense that it was a big win for them, yet you're going against them in this fixture.
Yeah, for all the reasons Adrian's outlined. But first of all, team news, no Van Dijk through suspension, but Konate, who missed last week, there was a suggestion he wasn't that far off, but now there's massive transfer speculation linking him with a move to Saudi Arabia as well. So, Klopp suggested an extra week will do him good. But
they won't leave Liverpool alone, will they, Mark? Saudi Arabia.
No. Salah and Konate now in demand. So their heads could easily have been turned. We just don't know. So that is a concern. If you are missing Konate as well as Van Dijk, that's a hammer blow to that defence, which hasn't looked great at the best of times, really. I think you've got 2 fullbacks there who've probably lost the idea of how to actually defend. And Van Dijk hasn't been himself for quite some time anyhow. It's obviously, as Adrian says, quite treacherous sometimes to oppose Liverpool in any way or any market at Anfield, because their record there is extraordinary. If you exclude the COVID season, Liverpool have lost just 1 home Premier League game across the last 4 seasons when fans have attended, which is incredible, really. 1 defeat in 77, 83% win record, crazy numbers. But this time, no Van Dijk. A midfield that's clearly in transition. Fullbacks, as I say, who are looking vulnerable defensively. They look a bit fractured. I thought they were a little bit lucky at Newcastle. I think most people would agree. Very poor in the first half against Bournemouth here a fortnight ago as well. Obviously, second best in the second half against Chelsea on week 1 as well, when you thought Chelsea probably would have been the more vulnerable of the two. And if you look at the 3 games put together, only 5 clubs have allowed more big chances than Liverpool so far this season. So defensively, they are giving you opportunities. And I think Villa, who've had that magnificent reaction to what was a really tough start, not just the Newcastle loss, but injuries to Mings and Buendia as well. And as Adrian alluded to, the change in system at Burnley worked a treat, really, didn't it? Because it allows Konza to kind of cover across right back when Cash bombs forward, just allows them that bit more flexibility, I think, as well. And Cash, he scored 2 goals, but he had 6 shots in that game. Digne as well had an assist and created 2 chances. Kamara and Douglas Luiz look very strong as a central midfield pairing to kind of hold the base down. And as Adrian says, Diaby's been absolutely wonderful, made a superb start, which is great to see. So there aren't too many weaknesses. And you just know that Unai Emery loves setting his team up in these kind of situations as the underdog. And, it's worked pretty well so far. When Villa have been away from home and priced up at 3-1 or larger under Unai Emery, They've won 3 times, drawn once, and lost just twice. They drew 1-1 here in May. They lost by just a 1-goal margin at Man United. Man City, the only team to beat them by 2 goals or more at those kind of prices. So, yeah, I think that the 1.8, 1.79 on Villa +1 stands out. I do expect them to score. They've only failed to score twice in 28 under Emery. And then Liverpool require 3 goals to see this bet lose. And Villa have only lost by 2 goals or more 5 times under Emery in 28 games. They've only conceded multiple goals 5 times in 28 under Emery as well. That's just twice or more, let alone 3 or more. So I think Villa score, and if they do score, it brings his handicap right into play.
Okay, yeah. Aston Villa +1.0 on the Asian handicap gives you a bit of security there. If you want an interest bet on this one, 179 currently. We'll lock that in as the podcast best for Sunday, 2:00. Now we'll go to the headline game this weekend. It's Arsenal at home to Manchester United, Sunday, 4:30. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back Arsenal at 184 here, Manchester United 4.5. The draw is available at 4.1. Both teams to score. Again, it's the theme of the show. 1.6 is the current price on yes. The Asian handicap line sees United get a 3/4 of a goal head start at 1.9, and the goal line very high once again, 3.5. But 162 is the under, 244 the over. So, Mark, back to you on this one. And look, maybe Adrian can get into a little bit on terms about what Arteta is trying to do in his first 3 games and the style of play, but maybe a bit on Manchester United and that comeback win. They go 2-0 down to Nottingham Forest and they dig out a result. Are you more of an opinion of Manchester United after that game, less, or somewhere neutral after it?
Oh, less.
Less.
They're in some sort of funk at the minute. Rightfully criticised for their win against Wolves. Very good in the first half against Tottenham, then absolutely nowhere in that second half, and then against Forest. Just insane, really, what they were doing in the first 10 minutes and then the final 10 minutes when playing against 10 men as well.
Yeah.
To nearly concede from a set piece in the last minute as well. Varane going off injured at half time. He's missing this weekend. Still no Shaw as well. So that defence is going to be weaker this weekend. I thought Eriksen coming back into that team might allow the midfield to be a bit more balanced without Mason Mount there. But again, they looked weirdly overrun, outmanoeuvred by Nottingham Forest. And I mentioned on week 1 or after week 1 about the potential fitness issue against Wolves, where they look really laboured and sluggish. I could say the same about the last 2 games where they haven't finished well at all, physically and mentally. They haven't looked at the races, and you do wonder whether it's something they've done intentionally, or it's the sort of payoff of travelling around the world for pre-season. I just don't know, but they've not looked at it at all. And you can't really go into a match against Arsenal and not mention their away record against big teams under Ten Hag, which we have done many, many times now. We saw them lose at Spurs. They've now faced 10 teams who finished in the top 9 last season away from home under Ten Hag. They've taken 1 point from those 10 matches, conceding 30 goals, conceding 2 goals or more in 9 of those 10 games as well. So it's difficult to be pro-United here, even if I've not been impressed massively by Arsenal either. Sort of doing what was required really against Forest about sort of setting the pulses racing. Second half, they looked a bit uncomfortable, weren't hugely on it from an attacking perspective. Some great goals scored, but ground it out against Palace, pretty ordinary game. And then Fulham, just the sloppy errors and marking again from set pieces against 10 men, just not acceptable really if you're wanting to be in a title challenge. And I think you guys talked about Arteta possibly getting his team wrong against Fulham. I think he's got his team wrong from the start of the season, in my opinion. I'm not really sure what he's trying to achieve. If Gabriel's leaving the club, then fair enough. But why is he on the bench? Just extradite him completely. Just get him involved. He's a wonderful player. If his head's in the game and he's good enough for the bench, he should be good enough to play. Tommy Ashu's suspension obviously required a bit more of a shuffle around, but they've been playing with square pegs in round holes. And I think Zinchenko coming back in will be a massive help. Get Gabriel back in will be a huge help. Get White back to right back. Allow Partey to move back into midfield. And take Havertz out of the firing line and have Rice and Partey as a really strong central midfield pairing alongside Ødegaard. I think that's quite exciting. So they do have options, of course. But, the Arsenal that we saw last season hasn't been there at the minute, and I think that's a bit of a shame, really, because I have really liked the business that they've done this summer at Emirates Stadium, of course, this weekend. So I'm expecting it to be lively, as matches tend to be there. Going back to the start of last season, Arsenal have scored twice or more in 17 of 21, scored 3 times or more in 13 of 21. including that really fun sort of 3-2 when these two teams met here last season. Expecting similar, to be fair, because Arsenal will give you opportunities at the Emirates. 16 of those 21 games we've seen both teams score. 15 of those have gone over 3.5 goals, with those matches averaging 4.04 goals, which is just enormous, really, and it's quite hard to ignore. So regardless of who the opponents are, matches here tend to be quite entertaining, quite goal heavy. I think United's defence, coupled with Arsenal's issues in both boxes, and Gabriel Jesus coming back in at least, will give give kind of the overs a bit of a look here. So I'm going to combine both teams to score an over 2.5 goals at 1.8. I think it's the safest solution. I wouldn't be too adverse, actually, though, to taking Arsenal to win this match and both teams to score at 3.3. I'm just not yet the trusting phase of Arsenal, and they went off at the same price back in January for this match, where obviously they're in a much, much better place. So, I don't feel like I'm getting a value price out of them at the minute. So I'll just back goals and just purely goals.
Okay, that was well laid out from Mark O'Haire. Over 2.5 and both teams to score combined gives you a 180 price. Adrian, we sort of know that Mark touched on the changes of what people are expecting Arteta to go back to last season. Zinchenko, Gabriel, Partey pushed into midfield, perhaps Jesus to come in. How likely do you think he is to do those changes? Is there any danger, not danger is probably the wrong word, but that he might stick with a Partey at right back and, I don't know, stick to what he's been doing the first 3 games?
Well, he's his own man, Mikel Arteta.
That's where I'm getting at, yeah.
I think that 90 to 95% of Arsenal fans, if not more, would pick the team that Mark laid out, myself included. You'd have Zinchenko doing the inverting from left back, White at right back, Gabriel and Saliba reunited. I'd have a midfield of Rice, Partey, and Odegaard, and use a front three. Saka, Martinelli, and I'd probably stick with Nketiah and bring Jesus off the bench, seeing as Eddie's been playing so well. So, yeah, that's the team I would expect. But Mikel is full of surprises at the moment. Kai Havertz, it hasn't really clicked for him yet. I think it will once he scores a goal or starts making contributions. I think he'll be fine. But he hasn't got off to the start that Arsenal fans wanted, and he hasn't looked sharp. So I'd probably leave him out of this game if I was in charge. In terms of the match, I'll just echo pretty much everything that Mark said. I mean, I'm going a little bit bolder. I'm taking the Miguel Delaney route here and going over 3.5 goals. He'd probably be going over 4.5 at this point.
Yeah.
But, I'm going over 3.5, which is unusual for me. But it's landed at Emirates Stadium 71.4% of the time since the start of last season, which is just bonkers. Yeah. Mark rattled off all the figures. The last 4 meetings have all gone over 3.5. Yeah, Emirates Stadium has been a fun place to watch football, and nothing we've seen so far would suggest this will be different. United have a lot of threats going forward. We know that. Bruno Fernandes, for as average as Man United have been, he's carrying a threat. Marcus Rashford is always good against Arsenal, or it seems like he is. Last season, he scored 3 goals in the 2 league games and gave the Gunners a really tough time off the left. And I think that's probably where we'll play again this time. So, yeah, the way that Arsenal have been defending, even with that lineup that I've sort of mooted, it'll be hard to contain Man United and to keep a clean sheet, because they have looked a bit wobbly. I can't lie that they haven't looked like keeping clean sheets on home turf for a while. They're giving up some big chances and making some real bad individual errors. But United, they're very depleted with Shaw and Varane out. That midfield is porous, isn't it? You can just stride through it. I mean, I just want, if he doesn't change it, I've talked about Arsenal stiffening up the midfield. If I'm Ten Hag, I'm stiffening up their midfield, to be honest, and maybe bringing in a McTominay, or just alongside a Casemiro, just to keep things a little bit tighter, because Arsenal will hurt them in that area. I've got no doubt about that. Partey steaming forward, sometimes Rice as well, Odegaard here, there, and everywhere. I think Arsenal will definitely target that, because Arsenal are a powerful, fit, fast team, and as Mark's pointed out, United have looked a little bit sluggish. Now, Arsenal haven't been at their fluent best, and they haven't been as sharp as you want them to be. But this is a match that gets the juices flowing for Arsenal players and supporters. Arsenal have a very good home record against them. And we remember the pre-season game. And in that pre-season game, Manchester United rocked up, I think it was in New York, with the sole intention, it seemed, of just kicking every single Arsenal player from pillar to post. And believe me, Mikel Arteta will have remembered that. So I'm expecting Arsenal to be pumped up for this game, big time, and to steam into Manchester United, who are vulnerable. What they've got to avoid is conceding the first-minute goal, which is just getting ridiculous. 3 times in 9 home matches. I did hear a stat, and it's amazing, that in the entire history of the Premier League, it had only happened twice in Arsenal home games where they conceded in the first minute, and then it's happened 3 times in the last 9 games.
Oh my God.
So it's just, it is freakish. Hopefully that's the end of it, and everyone's fully concentrated from the word go on Sunday. But yeah, I'd lean to Arsenal, but because of the record, because I think Arsenal are a better team than United, and I don't think Arsenal are too far away from clicking. But I haven't got enough confidence based on what we've seen so far to back them. So I'd just go for goals, a little bit like Mark. But yeah, over 3.5, and it's quite a good price, isn't it?
Yeah, fighting talk from Adrian Clarke there, referencing the pre-season friendlies just to get the juices flowing at the Emirates Stadium, calling out all Arsenal fans to make that atmosphere, particularly in that first minute, so they don't concede a goal. We're going to lock in over 3.5 goals, 2.44. But again, Mark's one is also over 2.5 in both teams to score. And incidentally, Miguel Delaney will be back for the Champions League podcast throughout this season. So really looking forward to having him back. We'll get into the EFL bets here, and we'll go to you, Mark, on this one, because you have a foray in the EFL here. It's Crewe at home to MK Dons.
Yeah, I think Adrian boarded the Crewe goals bus a couple of weeks back. I'm on it this weekend. Crewe hosting MK Dons, who are top of the table in League Two, recently relegated. And overs is 185, which I think is a very attractive price. Crewe were blanked by Bradford last weekend. It's the first time this season they've been nullified. They went into that game having scored twice or more in all 4 of their first 4 fixtures. And if you look at that Bradford game, they had the better of the first half, 2 good, decent opportunities to score, controlled the first half, and then the Bradford goal came against the run of play, and they struggled to make inroads thereafter. But as I say, in those first 4 games, Crewe had scored twice or more in all of them. They'd also conceded twice or more in all 4 of those fixtures too. There was 3 2-2s and a 4-2 win as well for Crewe. So they have been the great entertainers in League Two so far, alongside Swindon. I'm going to follow those trends because MK Dons are arriving with 4 wins from 5. But they've only managed 1 clean sheet so far this season. And this surprised me, really. If you look at the underlying metrics from those first 5 games, MK Dons are in the bottom 4 for XG ratio, non-penalty expected goals ratio, shot ratio, and shots in the box ratio. They've allowed the 4th most shots in the box, and they're also amongst the league leaders for big chances conceded, despite sitting top with 4 wins from 5. As I say, they've just kept 1 clean sheet in those 5, and they've conceded 2 goals or more on 3 occasions. But the defining quality of this MK team is absolutely in attack. They have, for me, 2 of the standout stars of the division, Jonathan Liko and Mo Issa. Exceptional options to have. They've scored 6 goals between them already. Fully expect them to get on the score sheet at Gresty Road. But in terms of the bet, just small samples, of course, but these 2 teams have played 10 games between them. They've managed 1 clean sheet between them. They've scored in 9 of 10 collective matches. 8 of those 10 have seen BTTS. 8 of those 10 have seen over 2.5 goals, and 6 of those 10 have gone over 3.5 goals. And it's worth noting too, as well, that Crewe at home have been a bit of a menace now, going back to last season as well. They scored twice or more in 9 of the last 10 home games too. So they'll be expecting to get a goal or 2 against MK Dons, who've defended not very well according to the underlying numbers. So yeah, 185 and over 2.5 goals.
Okay, yeah, all aboard the Crewe goals bus here alongside Adrian Clarke, Mark O'Haire is. And on to you, Adrian, for your EFL selections. Leeds finally got going, I guess, as the best way of putting it last week, an impressive win. They seem to be kind of getting slow start, but they're slowly trying to find their feet. They have some incredible players if they do get their act together. Up against the Sheffield Wednesday team this weekend that have had a really poor start since getting promoted from League One.
Yeah, Yorkshire Derby coming up. I had that on my list, by the way. I had Crewe against MK Dons. I did the research, and I looked on our sheet, and Mark had got in there. So
Mark O'Haire.
So yeah, he's pipped me to the post there. But yeah, I think that's a really, really good shout for Mark. Yeah, I'm going for Leeds against Sheffield Wednesday. Leeds to win and for over 2.5 goals to be scored. Obviously, these 2 clubs were 2 divisions apart last season, and I do think there is a difference in quality between them. Sheffield Wednesday have been poor. They haven't None of their additions have really blown me away. I don't think they've particularly made Sheffield Wednesday a better team. Maybe they've regressed a little bit, if anything. The Owls under Xisco Munoz lost all 4 games, and over 2.5 goals have been scored in 3 of those 4 games. Yeah, conceding, I think, 9 so far, Sheffield Wednesday. So not been very watertight. They offer a goal threat. They always do. They play in quite an attacking way, Sheffield Wednesday, but when they're allowed to. But yeah, I think that they're going to find it really, really difficult here. Leeds are incredibly different today than they were 2 weeks ago when when everyone was leaving. 3 or 4 of their star players said they wanted to go as well and weren't training. Well, Daniel Farke's used his man management. He's got Willie Gnonto back on side. He's got Luis Sinistera back on side. Crescencio Somerville's fit again. And he signed João Pirot, who I think is a fantastic centre forward at championship level. Pretty much guarantees you 20 goals a season. Scored in his debut last weekend when they won 4-3 at Ipswich. So Leeds have all of a sudden got a spring in their step. They've signed Jed Spence. You remember him from his time at Forest, potentially. They've signed him on loan as well to play at fullback, which was a little bit of a weak spot for them. So, yeah, Leeds are bouncing, and I think the fans are starting to believe. And just look at the numbers. So against Ipswich, they had 14. It was an exciting game, 14 shots. Leeds had 9 on target away at Ipswich Town, which is outstanding. Now, in the week, they did a mix and match team, rested quite a few players, but still a few played. That they actually lost on penalties to Salford City, but they had 33 shots in the game, 9 of which were on target. They are going to attack this game in front of a sort of raucous Ellen Road. And I don't think Sheffield Wednesday have got the balls to handle it, if I'm honest. I just think they're a little bit weak and just a little bit flat at the moment, Sheffield Wednesday. I think they could get blown away by Leeds. But Leeds aren't that watertight at the back, so they could concede one here, but I expect Leeds to win the game. So Leeds and over 2.5 goals, would be my selection.
Okay, 2.16 currently on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. And from a team bottom of the championship, Adrian, to second bottom, Huddersfield, with the worst goal difference in the league and a really poor defeat last week to Norwich City. So you're taking them on again, I guess, against the West Brom team.
Yeah, I think Neil Warnock might be wishing he did a Ben Foster and sort of just walked away. Do you know what I mean? Like he was such a hero last season, and I think it was maybe a mistake to stay on. I think he was quoted, wasn't he, as saying something along the lines, I'm great for 7K. I'm happy to come in and do 7 or 8 games at the end of a season. Maybe not the start, because, it's been a bad start for Huddersfield, really, really struggling. Just 1 point at Middlesbrough, who themselves have not been good. I've got to back West Brom here, because since Carlos Corberán, who was the manager, of course, at Huddersfield Town, since he took charge at the Hawthorns, no one in the Championship has taken more points at home than West Bromwich Albion. 39 points from 17 home games, which averages 2.3 per game. It's automatic promotion form at the Hawthorns. They swat most teams aside. This season, they haven't been that convincing with their performances, but have been scoring goals, a lot of goals from set pieces and long throws. They've conceded a few bad ones, actually, West Brom, but they've still managed to get 2 wins out of 2. And they should have too much for Huddersfield, who I would expect to be pretty defensive in their approach. So that's where the under 4.5 goals comes in. I don't think it's realistic for West Brom to consistently be involved in 6-7 goal thrillers on home turf. I think it will regress to the norm. And the norm last season for West Brom was clean sheets at home under Carlos Corberán. So, I think they're more than capable here of winning, probably winning to 0. I don't expect a thrashing, but given their record, I think they're more than capable of winning. So, to get it at just around evens or just under, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, they seem 2 pretty decent prices, I have to say. West Brom under 4.5 goals, 1.97 versus Huddersfield. We'll go to La Liga, Mark, where people who were on their Twitter feeds at least, or if they watched the game, would have seen Atletico Madrid winning 7-0 to Rayo Vallecano. And did I see a correct stat that they had less possession than Vallecano, which if they did is just classic Diego Simeone?
I didn't see that one. I saw some of the game. They were absolutely toasted by Atletico, but they didn't help themselves. They were a bit of a shambles from the off, disorganised defensively, and conceded well over 3.5 expected goals, 14 shots in the box, 7 big chances. The 7-0 was probably a little bit harsh because in the second half they were incredibly erratic. They were just basically trying to score a goal themselves and getting caught out on the counter-attack a bit too easily. But yeah, alarming, really. They did start the season with 2-0 wins over Almeria and Granada, one of which is a newly promoted side, but they were very clinical and quite good at Granada, but they were given 2 penalties against Almeria. Outside of that, they didn't create a huge amount, and it's quite interesting to see that Rayo were well beaten on the non-penalty expected goals count that day, and even against Granada, they only won the shots in the box count by 1. So they are transitioning after losing Iraola to Bournemouth this summer. I do expect a decent degree of regression. What they achieved last year was well above any preseason expectations. This year is going to be quite tough, and this is going to be a very tough away day as well because they're going to Betis, who've had a very, very tough start. They had Athletic away, Villarreal away, and Atletico at home. They've taken 4 points from those 3 games. Were unfortunate at Villarreal. They drew with Atletico, which was fair enough, and then they let a 2-0 lead slip at Athletic last weekend, conceding 2 first-half penalties, which kind of turned the tide against them in the Basque region. So last season at home, they won 9, drew 3, and lost 3 against teams outside of the top 4. They also beat Rayo home and away and had one of the best home defences in the division. In contrast, Rayo lost 9 times against teams outside of the bottom 3. They had one of the worst away defences as well. So just seeing where these 2 teams are at the minute, Betis have been really sort of challenged by their opening start, and they've stood up pretty well, even if they've only taken 4 points. And Rayo kind of probably fortunate to have 6 points on the board, and we saw them get outclassed at home against Atleti on Monday night. So to get 2.0 or 2.02, I think it is at the minute, just feels a bit too big for a home win. So happy to be on the Betis bus.
Okay, Real Betis 2.02 to beat Real Vallecano. 43% possession Atletico Madrid had in that 7-0 win on Monday night, which is just absolutely sensational stuff, isn't it? We will go to the best long shots here, and the guys have had a brilliant record so far with a couple of winners. And if you did have £20 stakes on each of these selections on the Matchup Betting Exchange, you'd be up plus 186, which does show you the power of the benefit of keeping your stakes the same, but also the value in the Matchbook Betting Exchange. And one of those markets that you will get big prices is the correct score and the best price. And we'll go to you, Adrian Clarke, because you have a correct score selection. We touched on the Ipswich game. They've been a great team to watch this season and lost 4-3 last weekend. This is correct score against Cardiff City.
Yeah, I mean it feels even more of a long shot, if you know what I mean, to go for a direct hit on the scoreline. But I just looked at this fixture because I was looking at the Championship numbers as a whole, actually, and the trends, and there's a lot of goals around at the moment in the Championship. And they've already been 10 2-1 wins, 2-1 home wins already so far this season. That's 4 more than any other result out there. So I thought, okay, I'm going to look at which match in the Championship card this weekend looks most like a 2-1er, and it's Ipswich. I've got to say, Ipswich have scored 8 goals already, so they're averaging 2 goals per game. They're very front foot. They're exciting. They're excellent going forward, but at the back, they've given up quite a few chances. Didn't defend very well at QPR. Defended poorly last time out against Leeds United. And although Cardiff aren't one of the stronger teams in the Championship, Cardiff have scored in all 4 of their matches so far. Both teams to score has landed in all of the Bluebirds games as well. So they've been conceding, scoring. So when all's said and done, I weighed this up. I looked at Ipswich and both teams to score to win, which is 3.6 standalone. Well, the most likely scoreline in an Ipswich and BTTS is 2-1, I would suggest, and you get a nice jump to 8.2 from 3.6. So that's my logic. So I'll be cheering on a Tractor Boys win, but for Cardiff to grab 1 of 3.
Okay, Ipswich 2, Cardiff City 1. That's an interesting play there. And again, do check out the Matchup Betting Exchange when those markets get real liquid an hour before kickoff. Those correct scores prices could even push out a little bit more as well. So Mark, this is a game we've actually covered, Brighton versus Newcastle United. So I guess you're going against and you've been the leader of the Brighton deservy trends of goals. So take it away with this interesting long shot selection.
Yeah, it's the draw and under 2.5 goals in Brighton versus Newcastle. We talked about Eddie Howe and his approach when he goes away to top teams tends to be quite frugal. We saw it at Man City. As I mentioned earlier, they scored just 1 goal in 7 trips to top 7 teams going back to the start of last season, which is pretty poor. 3 of those 7 matches actually ended 0-0. And here I'm covering the 0-0 and the 1-1. If you look at Brighton's home games last year, 42% actually went under 1.5 goals, including 4 of 9 when they hosted the top half. 5 of those fixtures also produced under 2.5 goals, as did 47% overall. So it's not unheard of for the matches to kind of go against the grain here with Brighton involved. And look, you need to pick your battles a bit. So I'll have a crack because I think Newcastle will have seen what West Ham did last week and may try to replicate it. Maybe not to the same extent, but I think there possibly is a case to go against goals. And obviously this kind of backs up Adrian's selection on the draw and also his hunch towards BTTS no as well. And I put this bet into the sheet without actually knowing Adrian's thought process or even his selections as well. So perhaps there is kind of a method to our madness.
Okay, yeah, great minds, etc. Draw and under 2.5 goals. You combine the match result and the total goal on the match of exchange. Adrian nodding in approval. 6.8 there. We will go to podcast best bets here, which have a record of 5-1, and the only one that let us down was Adrian's last week. Man City, both teams scoring.
How did that happen? Sheffield United were never going to score. Mark told me earlier, an hour in, they hadn't had a single shot. Is that right, Mark?
I think it was around that mark. Yeah, they definitely didn't have a shot in the first half. And yeah,
I was fuming.
I was nodding in and out of sleep, to be honest with you, until that goal. I couldn't believe it. We can blame Kyle Walker for that. It's very simple. I'm just lying on the ground for ages. But anyway, Adrian, your best bet for this to get back in form. But look, the bets have done very well this year. 5-1, as I said. Take it away with your best bet for the weekend.
I like an EFL under. I think, working together for the last few seasons, we've had quite a bit of success actually with the low scoring games, particularly in Leagues 1 and 2. And I'm going for Carlisle versus Shrewsbury under 2.5 goals. It's not a glamour fixture, is it? I guess. And if you look at the form book, you would certainly not be back in the overs here. Both teams, after 5 matches each, have averaged 1.6 goals a game. So it's not just them; their actual matches have only averaged 1.6 goals per game across the first 5. All 5 of Carlisle's matches so far have gone under 2.5 goals, and 4 of 5 for Shrewsbury have seen 2 goals or less as well. You might think, well, is that a fair reflection or not? Well, the numbers do indicate that it is a fair reflection. Shrewsbury have had the fewest number of open play shots. Carlisle, the 3rd fewest number. So they've lacked creativity, haven't offered a great deal inside the final third. The XG as well is pretty pitiful. 3.4 XG for Shrewsbury so far this season. This is in 5 games. So it's well under 1 a game. And Carlisle 3.9 XG as well. So, yeah, I neither side has got going basically as an attacking force. Neither gives that much away either. They've not conceded very many goals. But yeah, in total, they've had 10 matches between them, and they've scored a total of 6. Carlisle scored twice, Shrewsbury 4. So when they collide, it feels unlikely that we'll see a thriller, that it will be 2-2, 3-2 or whatnot, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I can't look past the numbers here and the form and say that this is going to be a very dull game at Brunton Park. Carlisle and Shrewsbury under 2.5. 1.9, I think, is quite a good price given their records this season.
Okay, that's the best bet for Adrian Clarke. Over to Mark O'Haire for the best bet. 3 out of 3 so far, Mark. As it meant, we touched on the best bets record. Overall in the podcast, you would be based on a £20 stake up over £70. That includes the 2% commission on match foot bet and exchange. So if you are restricted elsewhere, you're well able to get your bet. The general commission we charge is 2%. Mark, take it away. It's league on goals. You delved a lot into that last year. It's kind of taken a while, obviously 3 games in, but both these teams seem to be up in the top end of the table anyway.
Yeah, start with Brest because Eric Ra came in towards the end of last season, and under his watch, Brest have been very front foot and quite fun to follow. They've only failed to score in 5 of his 24 games. 58% of those have seen both teams scoring, and at home they've scored in 11 of 12, 58% hitting for BTTS, and 58% also covering the over 2.5 line. This term alone, 3 games for Brest, 2 of 3 have seen BTTS, 2 of 3 have gone over 2.5 goals. The XG output is at 3.37 per game, which is very strong. Last weekend, they went away to Marseille. The team expected to give PSG the the toughest challenge in the title race. They had 18 shots in that match and an XG well over 1.5. They lost the game 2-0, but Marseille's goalkeeper was lauded for his performance, really. And if you go back to the first game of the season, they played Lens. They were 2-0 down, turned the tide and won that game 3-2 in a terrific game. And actually, over the first 3 games, only 2 teams have seen more big chances created in their matches than Brest. So they have been quite fun to follow. As for Rennes, they started with a 5-1 win over Metz, who had been newly promoted, absolutely obliterated them. Then they sneaked a 1-1 at Lens and then failed to beat 10 Man Le Havre, and also a newly promoted team last week. They drew that game 2-2. 4 goals per game on average, 2 or 3 games going over 3.5 goals, let alone 2.5. All 3 have seen BTTS, and the XG average is at 3.52. So very strong figures from both teams. As for Rennes, they've scored in 36 of 41 league games going back to the start of last season, including 18 of 20 away. But they've only managed 2 clean sheets on their travels in that same sample. 75% of those matches seeing both teams scoring. I fully expect both teams to oblige here. That is just 1.68. So if you expect BTTS, you might as well look to over 2.5 goals, which is a much more backable 1.83. You're just looking for a third goal then. And Ligue 1 has been quite goal heavy, very early stages, of course, but 3.15 goals per game. 70% of matches seeing BTTS, 59% going over 2.5 goals, which are higher percentage hit rates, as are both teams involved here than the odds would suggest. So quite happy to sort of get behind goals when Brest play Rennes on Saturday afternoon.
Okay, and that over 2.5 goals is priced currently at 1.83, Mark's best bet of the weekend. Well, thanks to Mark and Adrian. It's international break next week, so I can hear the sighs from everyone listening to the podcast, but we will be back the following week, Wednesday, all going well, around the same time. So that'll be in your podcast feed Wednesday afternoon or evening. But yeah, we've international break and there'll be another one in October. But we'll get through it, guys. My thanks to Mark and Adrian, as always. A lot thrown at you there. Insights.matchbook.com. Best place to get a full recap over the weekend if you do want to check out the guys' selections. And if you are enjoying the videos, do hit that like button and subscribe. It's completely free to do to our YouTube channel. Until Wednesday week, take care. Enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.